My name is Aileen and I'm a person with substance use disorder in remission. I am also a drug addict in recovery. I'm currently the facilitator and CRM for the Responsible Moms program at Provoking Hope. I also work with DHS, CPS involved people, and now I'm running a life skills group. So much. Today I have been clean for 4 years, 9 months, and 16 days. Today I'm here to share a story with you about how I ended up here. And I'm a lot like other people in addiction, right? And I can make it really short, super short, and we could just be done with it, but that wouldn't be very much fun, right? I felt messed up, I got messed up, I stayed messed up, my life got messed up, and then I somehow figured out how to get out of that. I spent most of my life struggling with addiction in one form or another since I was 10. I came from a good, average, middle-class family. We didn't have substance use disorder. We didn't have the problems. My mom worked for the sheriff's department in a small rural county in Oregon. Like, it was a normal childhood, but there was something inside me that was not normal. The first time I got into treatment, I was 15 years old. After that, I spent the next 15 years not using my drug of choice. That didn't mean that my life wasn't. There were things inside of me that were still broken, but I didn't smoke dope. I got my GED, I went to college, and I ignored all the other things that were inside of me. And I just lived my life. I got this, it's fine. I had my cats, I had a house, I had a job, things were great. And at 30 years old, I found myself using my old friend, meth. This time, my friend was different, and I was different. And I wasn't just a teenager with teenager things. I had a lot more to risk and lose. I was a fully grown adult who somehow managed to, quote-unquote, successfully live life over the last 15 years. So I had absolutely no idea what that meant or what was about to happen to me. The first time I got high, it was years before there was a day that I didn't use drugs. Within 3 months of me getting high for the first time, the water and the power got shut off in my house. My house had become a trap house. Within 7 months, I was evicted, and I was living between an RV in the woods, my ex's garden shed, and a crawl space under my friend's house. Within 9 months, I was arrested for the first time for felony drug possession and was facing 5 years in prison. And just a little over a year after I first got high, I ended up pregnant, and I found out while I was staying in the crawl space of my friend's house. I spent the next 2.5 years struggling, and so did the people that loved me the most. My addiction did not magically get better when I got pregnant. In fact, it got darker. It got worse. The first time I injected drugs, I was 6 months pregnant. And somehow, through some internal shame and guilt, I managed to stop using 3 weeks before I gave birth to my son. And we were clean at the hospital. There's no other way to explain it other than it was a miracle. So I got to take him home. I thought that was it, right? Like, I have my baby, he didn't get taken, I can do this, and 3 weeks later, I was getting high again. I spent the next 14 months using drugs, experiencing domestic violence, and trying to parent my young son. I did the best to make it look good. As you can see in the last picture, that was his first 4th of July. I tried to not use for about 48 hours before that so we could take some really good pictures and post them on Facebook, and my family wouldn't think that I was a piece of shit. I knew that what I was doing and what we were going through wasn't normal, and I did everything to avoid the consequences of my actions. I was on out-of-state felony probation from my arrest. I managed to avoid prison, and I got a deferred sentence. but I didn't want to do any of the requirements. I didn't want drug and alcohol treatment. I didn't want to tell anybody now that I have this child that I had a problem because I was afraid they were going to take him away. The only thing I knew at that point was how to get high. I thought I knew how to hide it. Turns out everybody knew. Everybody knew. My PO knew. My mom knew. My grandma knew. I kept lying to myself. And I was scared. Eventually I could not run my actions, and in September of 2019, 9 police officers showed up at my grandparents' house with CPS workers looking for me. My grandma found out, like, for sure that day. They took my son. And the first thing I did was stick a needle in my arm, because that's what I knew how to do. At that point, I just wanted to keep getting high, because that's what I knew how to do. That was the thing that I knew how to do to numb all the things that were inside of me. I knew I needed to get clean, and I knew I needed to do it for myself, but I didn't think I deserved it. Eventually, I started doing the things that I was told to do. My initial motivation was a lot of shame and guilt. Not that anybody put that on me, but I internalized it a lot. I thought people would stop loving me, and they would stop caring about me, and they would stop helping me at a certain point, so I had to do something. I kept using, but I started doing the things that I needed to do. I started going to the treatment groups, I started doing the recovery meetings, and I did it all high. Eventually, my family was able to buy a house in Yamhill County. We moved from Clackamas County to Yamhill County, and that was in February of 2020, right before everything shut down from the pandemic. So I was unable to transfer my treatment groups to Yamhill County ABH at the time, and my caseworker was like, just go to 7 meetings online a day and let me know what they were. Really bad suggestion, because addicts lie. We will write whatever we want down on paper, okay? Just lived experience. Eventually I found a meeting, a midnight meeting out of Southern California, and I remember these women asking me to stay after the meeting, and they just talked to me. And eventually, every night at 3 a.m., they'd tell me they were going to bed and they'd hope to see me tomorrow. Some of those women I still am in contact with today. I kept doing that until I got a day clean. And then another day, and then another day, and another day. My clean date is April 16th, 2020. On Monday, May 11th of 2020, the day after Mother's Day, my CPS case was closed, and my son was returned to me in my care. I lived in the home with my mother and my stepfather, so he had safety service providers, and we still live with him today. They're a big part of my recovery and my family. So early on in my recovery, I was approached by another woman after a meeting who told me that she saw me struggling with something that I didn't want to talk about. I was like 9 months clean. I didn't want to talk about anything. She just told me a quick 5-minute story about the things that she did in her addiction and what she put her children through. And, you know, a lot of people would think they were horrific things. And I was like, oh, me too. Me too. And she said, you can get better. We can get better. We can do better. And we don't have to be those people. And that was the first time that I felt hope. I felt hope that I didn't have to be a piece of shit. I didn't forever have to be a person who neglected and didn't take care of their child and put their child in very dangerous situations. There's a lot of shame and guilt as a parent with substance use on board and what we put our kids through. There's more shame and guilt in that than the active using and all the criminality that went around with getting loaded. Other addicts look down on people like that. And the truth is that when I was using, I was a terrible parent. No matter how much I thought that I was getting it right, me using was undoing anything that I was doing. It wasn't working. But once I got into recovery and I started to change myself, and I started to find some more hope by talking to other people who were just like me, I started to feel better. I started to be able to heal some of the things inside of me. My shame and guilt is for me to deal with. That's not for anybody else. I don't have to allow anybody else to put that on me. I have enough of it myself. At some point, I had about 4 community members who worked at Provoking Hope encourage me to apply. I was like, no, that's not, I don't think I can do that. Now, this time I've been going around town sharing my story and sharing little PG-13 details, as I like to call them. And they're like, no, some people need to hear what you have to say. I was like, fine. So I filled out an application, and I went in and sat down with Deb Cross and Betty Peterson. And they're like, yeah, we want to hire you. This is when we want you to start. And we want you to start the Responsible Moms program. I was like, me? You know what I did, right? And they're like, yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. So I went through the CRM training, and I was told all I needed was my lived experience. I got a lot of that. I had a lot of that. So that's where I started, December 6th, 2021. And I've been here ever since, doing the same thing. I sit down with these women who are either still using or just clean. And before they can say anything to me, I tell them a 5-minute story. I give them 3 PG-13 details, which are terrible to most people. And I let them know that there's nothing that they've done or been through that I cannot relate to. And 95% of the time, they cry or they tell me something that they've never told somebody else. And that, for me, that's what makes this job worth it. They don't have to come back, but they know that there's somebody else out there that knows. There's somebody else out there who's been through it and can talk to them and walk alongside them on their journey. A lot of women are never going to have the courage to say the things that I will say about what they've done and what they've been through, and that's okay. You don't have to. But I think that there needs to be more people who have been through those terrible things who are willing to say, hey, I did this, and this is what I did to change my life and change who I am. Because I can walk into a room of people now and stand here and be like, oh, I did all these terrible things, and it's, you know, and I don't feel like throwing up. I don't feel like running under the table, because it is what it is. I am who I am, and we can all get better. We can all have some hope, and as long as you're not dead, there's a chance.